Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleios. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Matthew. So glad you're here. We're in chapter 22 in the Holy Week between Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem for the last time and his glorious death and resurrection. Christ continues to teach the people in Jerusalem, and this time a parable between the parable of the great feast. It's a little long, so I'm going to break this into two sections, and the parable does break down nicely into two sections. We'll take the first one today, verses 1 to 10. Remember, parables were meant for the Jews to teach them about Messiah so that they would repent. So they aren't meant primarily to believers at other ages outside the gospel times, though we do learn about salvation and Messiah and Christ. But again, the primary application were to the Jews that they would accept Messiah. So, verse 1, Jesus answered and spake unto them, again, these are the Jews, by parables. So remember, he's speaking in parables to confound the Jews because they were under punishment not to understand the gospel. And then the parables were part of this to make them be confounded even more. And it fulfills the first several verses in Psalm 78. And if you want to read about the punishment of the Jews, first part of Deuteronomy 29, Isaiah 6, 9, and 10, Isaiah 29 and 14, other verses talk about God making them spiritually deaf and dumb. Verse 2, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king which made a marriage for his sons. Remember, kingdom of heaven is the prophesied kingdom of the Messiah from the Old Testament. That is their salvation. So they should be interested in this. The marriage, of course, was a very important societal festivities, a societal event, I should say, in Israel. And people would come. They would not readily reject such an important invitation, especially to an important person like a king. So they were expected to be there, and not to be there probably was a insult. And it's for his son. The son here, of course, is Messiah. Remember, too, that Israel is likened to God himself as a bride, as say in Isaiah 54. So the imagery here is deep. So he sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent for other servants, telling them which are bidden, the invitees, behold, I prepared a dinner, my oxen, my fatlings are killed, things are ready, come to the marriage. And verse 5, they made light of it, and went their ways, and one to the farm, another to merchandise. And the remnant took his servants and entreated them spitefully and slew them. So he called them several times, and the servants appeared to be irritating to the invitees. Not only would they not come, but they slew the messengers. And this pictures the prophets in the Old Testament slain by those who did not like their message. But when the king heard, he was mad and sent forth his armies and destroyed the murderers and burned up their city. Otherwise, God's wrath. And said unto his servants, the wedding is ready, but they which are bidden were not worthy. They were depraved in their sin. Go ye therefore to the highways, and many as ye shall find, and bid to the marriage. So the servants went out to the highways and gathered together as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. So what does this mean to the Jews? It meant that they were chosen, the special people of God, to come to the wedding feast of the Son and to fulfill the purpose of Israel into salvation and to be God's people. And they rejected it. And God called multiple times, as you can see in the Old Testament. And even now, when Christ has come, the ultimate call. And so God punishes them and slays them. his wrath, his punishment. And then he turns and invites other people, anybody, seemingly good or bad, to come. And these are the Gentiles, to fill up the wedding with the Son and God, to complete all those who were chosen. We'll talk about the choosing next video. So this would also have been particularly irritating to the Jews, not only just the parable, which was difficult for them to understand, but the fact, if they did understand, that the Gentiles were being called over them, the important chosen people of God. And they viewed themselves so highly, but not as Christ viewed them. Christ wanted somebody who was spiritual and obedient to God from the heart, and not just a people called God's people, but living their own sinful way. So what do we learn? Well, we learned that the Jews should not have rejected Messiah, who made them his special people and invited them to the wedding feast pertaining to salvation. And having been rejected, Christ calls the Gentiles also to salvation. And of course, we'll see this play out and become real in the New Testament. Thank you for joining me today. We'll continue this fascinating and instructive parable next time. Please join me then.